Why do you think infidelity occurs most commonly in your experience?
I would honestly say if you ever get cheated on, I know people hate me for this, but it's usually your fault. And the reason I say that, particularly with men, a cheating woman shows you every red flag from day one. If you choose to ignore red flags, you'll pay the price. In life, you pay prices. There's price tags. Now, everybody shows you that the cheaters show you they're going to be a cheat. And how they show it is very simple. Their values. Maybe they'll show you that they've done it in the past. Maybe they show you that they are not so traditional. Maybe they show you that they don't believe in monogamy. Maybe they're addicted to pornography. Cheaters show you their past. They show you everything. Now, if you don't want to get cheated on, you either choose that cheater, but know what the score is, and then you don't get hurt, or you know what's going to happen. But ignoring red flags is always going to land you in that position. Now, whenever I have clients that have been cheated on a lot for 5-6 years, a man's got another mistress, or 3 years she's still been talking to her ex, I was like, there's no way she can get to 3 years without you consenting. And they're like, what do you mean by that? I was like, there would have been late replies, there would have been days their phones are off, there would have been not telling you where they're going. They tell you everything. Their social media would have suggested something. You would have been questioning them sometimes, and they would have got defensive rather than reassuring you. They would have been signs you chose to ignore them. The price you pay for that, unfortunately, is infidelity. So you either accept an unfaithful and know what they're doing, and then just decide, okay, I can accept it, but I'd rather be with you than not without you. But denying the red flags is always, it's going to catch up on you. The infidelity is going to occur. So that's why people get cheated on. Why people choose to do it is because they can get the comfort of a relationship with the joy and pleasure of an alternative connection. So they get two in one. So they might get the comfort of somebody who pays their bills, but the sex life of a young personal trainer that she wants. And he might get the comfort of a good wife, but then the sexual experience of a escort when he goes and does that. So we become so greedy. We don't realize that some things have to involve a sacrifice. A healthy marriage has to involve sacrificing the alternatives. We don't see the need to sacrifice alternatives because now we are so gluttonous. Even if we eat a lot, we can still do that and get surgery. Even if we spend a lot, we can still get credit cards. We no longer see the sacrifice of alternatives as required in order for positive outcomes.
Yeah, there's a cool quote that says, there are no options, only trade-offs, right? That for everything that you want, there is something else that you need to give up. Yeah. And I think that's a good way to look at relationships.
Yeah. If you want a good, healthy marriage, unfortunately, you might have to sacrifice the most exciting sexual experience every day of your life because that's what 20 years of marriage doesn't look like. You know, it's realistic. And if you want like a single life, then you have to accept that your emotional, like you might suffer from anxiety and depression in the long run. So you've got to realize whatever decision you make, it comes with a lot of pain and suffering. Pick your pain. Being married, the pain might involve being bored. It might not being sexually stimulated, but being single, the pain might involve a lot of loneliness, depression, and sadness. Just pick which pain you can handle and confine yourself to that decision and ward off all the alternatives.
What do you think about getting back together after infidelity?
Get back together. Absolutely. If there's children, I don't say no way, no way, no way. If there's no children, I always tell people to reconsider. But one thing I would say is different from men and women. When a man forgives a female cheat, she can't respect you the same way. You got to remember, we like alpha men. Alpha men don't accept promiscuity. So what happens when you accept a woman back? A part of her will always feel like you're weak. And you don't have the willingness to walk away because there's nothing that can push a man to walk away more than infidelity. And if that didn't do it, nothing will. So now she's lawless. For a man, again, I don't massively recommend it unless there's children, but I would focus more on what was the meaning behind the affair. What were they seeking? And if it's something that you can do in your marriage, by all means do it. But if it's something that's more traumatic and it's more to do with an emptiness and a trauma in their childhood, and you can't fill that void, then you still can get back with them, but expect the behavior to continue. When people get back together after affair, I just say, but ask yourself, if he stayed exactly the same and still cheated 5 years down the line, could you be okay with it? And if you decide, you know what, I can, as long as you're good to me and good to the kids, I can do it. By all means do it. But don't go back together expecting it to be completely different. It's not realistic.
Interesting to think that one of the considerations that you're focusing on to do with infidelity is not whether the person can accept that themselves. It's whether the other person can accept being accepted, especially for women.
Yes. So essentially, can you accept worst case scenario? If worst case scenario happens again, can you accept it? If the answer is no, then you're just delaying the divorce. Just do it now. If the answer is yeah, because the alternative, I just don't want to do it, then go ahead. But always ask yourself, can I accept worst case scenario? Then if that happens, at least you're prepared for it. If it doesn't happen, at least your marriage stands a shot.
It's a brutal realization, I guess, for guys that maybe their partner may have had infidelity, and then they can try and do the work to be able to accept them again. But that is creating a rhythm, a vibe that may make it difficult for the partner that cheated on them to accept them back again.
Something dies in us when you accept the unacceptable, because your masculinity is depleted. And the other thing is, the man loses his masculinity. He starts to hate himself for not being able to walk away. Instead of having a pride of attached to like, okay, I've kept my family together, they know they shouldn't do it. There's something that speaks to them. So they end up hating themselves. And because they can't always express that, they can get quite hostile and violent towards a woman and can get quite verbally abusive towards her. And I'm not saying she's like an angel, but the verbal abuse, and it's all you're doing is, like I said, you're just essentially punishing her for your inability to walk away. She's going to beg and say, please forgive me, please forgive me. But the reality is, we don't want the man that forgives us. We really don't. We want the man that says, you had your chance. It's been a pleasure. I wish you the best. Because that's the man we respect.
Why do married women cheat?
A lot of married women, a couple of reasons. They didn't marry the person they truly wanted to marry. Their biological clock hit them, and they married who was available at the time. And they might have had an ex that they idolized. They might have had something else. They didn't marry correctly. They didn't choose the person that they wanted to marry. They chose the person who wanted to marry them. And so they settled to begin with. So they started wrong. And that can happen. On the alternative side, it could be is when she hasn't felt desired for a really long time. And she puts the feeling of needing to feel desired and sexy and attractive as a number one emotion. So she'll put that over and above her family, and she craves that. So if she's naturally born quite attention seeking, or if she married who wanted to marry her rather than who she truly wanted to marry, unfortunately she's more prone to cheating. Yeah, and also if she grew up with a bit of chaos, I find that women that come from single parent homes are far more likely to cheat. And the reason I've noticed that, and the only hypothesis I can think of, is that usually when somebody isn't fulfilling our needs, we can go back to a safe haven of two. We're designed to have two parents that love us. We've got mum and dad. Two people love us. That's how it should be. Now, when those two people, one of them is absent, you always feel like there's a void. So when you're in a relationship and all of it is on him, if he stops giving you that love, you almost seek it as a backup, because you don't want that emptiness that you may have experienced as a child. So they almost have a backup before they can leave the guy. They can't just leave and be by themselves, because that really feels lonely. They'd rather leave when they've got somebody else. It's like having that extra parent in your life. You like when you have mom that annoys you, you've always got dad. You've got a backup. But when you didn't grow up with that being by yourself is really horrible and lonesome. So they always, if one person lets them down, they always try and keep a backup in case that person removes their love from them.
It's a safety hatch.
Safety hatch, yeah.
What about men? Why do men cheat?
Men usually cheat when they're chasing an ego boost. They're not usually in love with the person that they're cheating with, but they are in love with the feeling that person gives them. And sometimes the person makes them feel seen. Sometimes the person makes them feel like they're fed. Sometimes the person makes them feel attractive. Whatever it is, heard. They're chasing a particular feeling that they are deprived of, either from their marriage or from their childhood. And as a result, they seek it. It's not sexual. People think it's just, men love sex, men love sex. There's some men out there, if they really love sex, they would just have sex with their wives. They haven't had sex with their wives in a long time, but they crave novelty, or they crave somebody else making them feel a certain way. So I don't think it's all sexual. I think it's far more psychological and emotional than they think it is. And they label it as sex, but really it's the new person is making them feel seen. And maybe they felt unseen for a really long time at home.
And I suppose that a lot of single people or escorts are purposefully portraying a version of themselves that makes that person feel seen.
Yeah, the escorts know exactly what they're doing. Same with sugar babies. They know that with this man who's been married for so long, they target married men because they have in my experience of watching them, what they do is they have a leverage, because every time he doesn't pay her, he can say, I'm going to tell your wife. So they really do target married men because they've got that leverage, but also the low self-esteem in married men is so easy to manipulate them. Giving them a phone call to tell them that they look great, tell them that they smell great, telling them there's coffee ready. They haven't heard these phrases in a really long time, and that works perfectly with married men. But it doesn't work so much with a man who's been on the single scene for so long and has 4 or 5 different girls coming over every month or whatever it is. So
because everybody's fawning over him in the same way.
Yeah, so you don't stand out to that guy.
We'll get back to talking to Sadia in 1 minute, but first I need to tell you about Factor. If you are too busy this autumn to cook but still want to make sure that you're eating well, Factor is the solution. With Factor, you can skip the extra trip to the grocery store, plus all of the chopping and prepping and cleaning up, while still getting the flavour and nutritional quality that you need. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy. And right now, their autumn menu has some absolute bangers, like a cranberry pecan chicken and an apple Dijon pork chop. Or if, like me, you're struggling to hit your protein goals, you can try their Protein Plus meals with 30 grams or more of protein per serving. I cannot tell you how big of a life hack it is to only be 2 minutes away from a 30 gram of protein meal at all times. Right now, you can get 50% off by heading to the link in the description below, or going to factormeals.com/MW50 and using the code MW50 at checkout. That's factormeals.com/MW50 and MW50 at checkout. What's happening, people? If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe.